Hey everybody, this is Carlos Zeyzal, founder and CEO of G2 Esports, former professional gamer and wonderful bodybuilder, as you may have known. Of course, you know me for that, pretty sure. And you're watching Dankan's channel. Thorin, my man. Enjoy.
Perkz joining Cloud9, more specifically being transferred from G2 to Cloud9, is the biggest transfer in the history of League of Legends. Both monetarily, as far as I'm aware, significance-wise, like there's an enormous player in his peak, the prominence of the fact that you're moving between regions. Like, if you try to think back in history, you can only think relative to their era, but this could be like when, for example, famously, instead of Pederson, Reginald was trying to also get Expeke from Fnatic, who'd won both splits at that point in time. He'd just gone top 4 at Worlds. Obviously, he'd won Season 1 championship. That would have been an enormous move, a massive power move when he was still in his prime. Or how about if Faker had gone to China with the Korean Exodus? He'd gone for Season 5, or he went in Season 7 when the lineup was clearly a little bit dodgier and they'd lost some of the classic players. What about the one that Cloud9 themselves almost had? People might forget this. It's been mentioned a few times in shows. Jack mentioned it in my interview with him. But after Season 8, it wasn't just G2 trying to get Caps, because Caps was a free agent. Cloud9 were trying like a motherfucker to get Caps. So there has been enormous speculation and an emotional component to this. This hasn't just been a business deal that people have been looking at, because let's be real, think about how it's activated fans from seemingly everywhere. It's a game changer for the regions. Elite, prime level EU talent just doesn't go to NA. That's supposed to be the logic. It has been basically throughout all of history. I'm sorry, Pederson wasn't on a top level team. He hadn't become an elite level player yet. Febiven was a couple of years removed from his prime and wasn't in the best scenario in terms of who was available. Soaz didn't have the offers in Europe and he was coming off a bad year. Sven, yes, he'd had a lot. He's probably the closest you can get to it. But even then, that's because before the megabucks really came to Europe, where they could really pay you to play. And it wasn't even that big a deal in terms of you were mainly going for the money and maybe to go with Pederson. And yeah, there's all sorts of shit going on with that. So the interesting thing for me is, usually they just go because they lack a big enough offer in Europe that they think they could win or do well at Worlds, and they want to both get paid and they want to gamble on a good NA roster, hopefully, and be surrounded by some talent. So as a result, this has been one of the most talked about deals entirely. It's had a million angles to it, because think about it, right? G2 fans are engaged. Fnatic fans are engaged. LEC fans are engaged. LCS fans are engaged. People talking about the business are engaged. Even there's probably Asians looking, going, what the fuck is going on over there? So as a result, this might be the most talked about off-season move ever in the history of League of Legends. Think about some of the topics that have come up. Was it fair for G2 to sell him to the LCS? Did Perkz want to go to Fnatic? What does this say about the regions? What does it say about Perkz? What does it say about the business of esports? Now, I actually specifically waited to do this video. If I want to get the most hits and I want to drop this and have a massive atom bomb-like effect across esports, which actually could also have affected this deal itself, I dropped this when I first heard about it weeks ago. I dropped this when the deal isn't even done, but they're all weighing it up, thinking about it. But that's not what I'm doing, because I also, with my journalism, I'm not just someone commenting on it. I do it in a way that what I consider responsible. And so for this particular deal, you notice I very rarely comment on deals that are in the air anyway. I typically wait till it's officially done, because I'm more about doing a good video and doing it the right way than I am about just speculation. Certainly on talk shows where I am just a pundit, and in that scenario we make it clear this is pure speculation. I certainly engage in that and I find that to be fun. But for my own work, for this one especially, I decided I didn't want to at all influence the deal. Now listen, I certainly did on a minor level. Like, I had my input with some of the parties involved in the deal and the would-be deals, and some of them asked me for advice or what they thought, or what they thought could go this way, or why would I do it, or should they do certain things. I gave them my input, but I didn't even give all of them this full picture. Because again, I'm not someone who wants to tell someone what to do. I want to give them something, give them a bit of advice in a certain way, but then I want them to make their own choice and that be on their head and they're responsible for that deal. So now though, I can give you everything, obviously not private things that are privileged information, but without the fear that it can mess the deal up or unduly influence the deal. One of the things people don't understand is, if I only hated Fnatic and TSM, I'd wait every time until after the season to wreck them. I'd wait until after they re-sign a player I don't like Nemesis or fucking some of the junglers they've had. I'd wait till after when they're totally fucked and they've signed up for his Broxer. Instead, one of the reasons I actually go out there and say my thoughts is, as much as I despise these teams, I want great players to have great careers. I want teams that have the chance to sign the best players they can and make this the best sport that it can be. So as a result, I like the fact that I can influence those aspects. And whether they ever credit you or not, who gives a fuck about that? I could give a fuck less about the credit from Fnatic or TS. They can go suck a dick, right? In this scenario, one of the reasons I want to do these things is because I know that I can influence it, and so I will exert some of that influence when I think, again, it's responsible for my ideals, my goals in this industry. Because I could always just do the Napoleon angle, right? Never interrupt your enemy when he's in the midst of making a mistake. I don't div that way, though. I go out and I tell him, you're making a mistake. Look at this guy, he's doing something wrong. Here's what he's doing wrong. Here's the mechanism of it. And all that matters is at the end, it gets through and hopefully something improves in some ways. I mean, as you see, TSM don't need any fucking help to destroy their team. Like I joked a while ago in like September. Turns out Doublelift was their reckoning, wasn't it? He's fucking bodied them 10 times harder. What's the one thing he did for them? Helped them win LCS. How did that work out for him? It put him in an even worse spot, didn't it? Now he's just bodied their whole fucking offseason. It's hilarious. So, okay, let's get into this. Because I think I am the only person who could make this video, who has the contacts, who has his own ideas, who has the different perspectives that I can bring together and synthesize into hopefully a higher resolution of looking at these topics while also diving into the horizontal both the horizontal coverage, but the vertical depth of each of the aspects. And also, because let's be real, I'm also sort of cheating when I say that. I'm the only one who can make my videos the way I make my videos. That's why my brand endures. And any little shitter out there is like, yeah, don't know it for relevance, or you will be nothing in for you. They've been telling me that my whole motherfucking career. So you know what? Take a seat, have a cook, shut the fuck up, have a smile, and watch me fucking cook, boy, because you ain't never seen anything like this. So let's start out, right? Obviously, the first point that this whole deal hinges on is G2's choice about what they were going to do for their mid laner. Now, I did a video on this. It was called Carlos's Choice. Witty title, isn't it? Yes, that's how I work. Shut the fuck up. So basically, Carlos's choice was he had to pick, do I want Caps or do I want Perkz? Because basically, the premise goes like this. For next year, Perkz doesn't want to play AD carry anymore. He doesn't want to play that role as much as he wants to play mid lane. We'll get to all of that soon. So Carlos or G2, it's just Carlos in this case. He's basically his own GM. It's not just the org. It's not like fucking Duffman. It's like, my vote is like, no, it's Carlos's choice at the end of the day. So he had to pick, okay, well, now I have two of the absolute best players at possible mid lane, and I have to pick which one do I want. Now, why did he have to pick? Because he has them both under contract. So it's not up to those players, it's up to Carlos. So Carlos has the choice, and he's picking, do I want Perkz or do I want Caps for the mid lane? Now, obviously, especially, listen, without even knowing the things I know, if you can just read between the lines, obviously Perkz wanted to stay in G2. It's his org. He's done so much for them. When you're a winner, by the way, a general principle is, as long as you're a winner, you're on a top team, and you've got most of the pieces, you let them come to you. You don't go running after them. Pay attention, Reckless. You might fucking learn something. Probably not. You are one of the slowest learners of all time, and you have constantly ignored most of the advice I've given you. So, again, go fuck yourself. So, emotionally and loyalty-wise, we're talking here. We're talking about the human element. I think actually Perkz has earned the right to write his own ticket. As a human, I do believe he essentially should have been allowed to potentially retire with G2, to play mid lane for G2 if he wanted to do. And as a result, to some degree, listen, if he gets really terrible and doesn't put his time on the game, yes, at that point, kick him. But as long as he's in prime shape, he's really motivated, he's still a guy who has all these extra intangibles, I think essentially he probably should. I think on the human, the friendship, the person-to-person level, I think actually that he should have been allowed to do that. But that's not whose choice it was. This was up to the org / Carlos to sell either Caps or Perkz. Now, because Caps isn't going to go to AD carry, which I don't blame him for, like, not much needs to be said there. Maybe one day I'll make a video on that if people finally start behind the scenes being willing to let some of the shit come up. But put it this way, they've been semi-bullshit with how they've presented that publicly. Where, like, they make out, like, they've spun this narrative that, like, it was like he wanted to be ADC, and then he even liked ADC, and maybe he would have continued as ADC, and they were totally happy with him at ADC, and by the end, yeah, he was good at ADC, and this is all cool, but he's moving back anyway, we're swapping back, and Perkz is going back there, and anyway, it's all worked out, and anyway, do not pay any attention to the man behind the curtain, like, this is, Caps is both an AD carry and a mid laner, but Bazali's mid laner again, and now there's a choice between the two, and he won't go back to ADC to again, Kind of like, let Perkz take a chance at mid lane. Funny how that works out, isn't it? Make your own conclusions. All I'll say is this. Go look at the press conference. I think it was after they beat Gen.G, where they ask them a whole bunch of questions, G2, and someone asks Caps something like, you know, like what was your fondest memory or what was your best moment in G2? And he actually says something mad like the split he wins as AD carry. And basically, don't look at him. Look at his teammates and their reactions. I'll just leave it at that. So now let's go to the G2 side of the equation because they're the ones making the choice. So basically, G2, we're really talking about Carlos again. Let's look business-wise. Let's look as a man who is a businessman. And by the way, he isn't even having his company like on the stock market. He's not even responsible to shareholders. Like he's responsible to a degree to investors. But then you know what they were getting into. And it's his company. He can do what he wants. So as a businessman, you can probably sell both of them for megabucks. I'm sure you could get an enormous buyout for Caps as well. Although I actually think when you add it up, and we'll talk about this later, the intangibles Perkz brings probably means he's actually worth even more money on the transfer market because he has this additional implied value. But let's be real, Caps is at the peak of his fame, the peak of his relevance, the peak of his star power, unless he actually is just going to be the best player in the history of League of Legends from any region ever. Now, he's the only one who could probably do it, but probably not going to happen, right? So right now, this is also when you get the most for Caps. So this was not an easy choice whatsoever. I can tell you that from behind the scenes. So business-wise, you keep Caps. That's just all there is to it, but we're obviously going to go in it. So performance-wise, he's the better player in the West. He's the best at his position. He's a game changer in the server, key in the server. So as a businessman and a general manager, also Carlos is doing that well. He's not just the owner. He's doing general manager, which, by the way, already makes it a bit blurred and can sometimes get a bit dodgy, but we've seen times where it's worked in sports, etc., even though it can be a very tricky approach. You are looking, as a general manager, for the best roster you can field in the server in the context of the players fit together and have good personality. Not just the best players only, but the best roster you can put out there every single season, no matter what happened last season. That's why I made that video about, essentially, as long as certain other caveats are in place, you always try and upgrade. You never say, well, it was good enough for last season, but you have an option to upgrade this guy, and he seems like he'll fit into these. So basically, it's the argument as to why I even said back in the summer when they were #1 in LEC, that I actually thought Mad Lions, even though I know they wouldn't do the move, and they didn't have the money, quite frankly, that they were very silly to keep implying publicly, beyond to help Rome's ego, that Alfari wouldn't make them an even better team if he was in their team over Rome. I'll just say look at the results for that one. How did that one work? Again, I'm cooking, but at the moment, we're just preparing the ingredients, aren't we? I haven't quite heated up. So, as a businessman, it doesn't matter what the political implications are of taking a player in and out. It doesn't matter what the emotional cost of taking a player in or out is. As Bill Belichick famously said in the NFL, I'm guessing he took some of this from Bill Parcells, like, better to cut them a year early than a year late. That's why that guy has more championships, more conference. I mean, certainly helped play in that fucking dog shit division. But no, that's why he has more of everything and just impossible results. That's why he was an unbelievable coach and GM. Now, obviously, this is where everyone else's video stops. Like, but I am just a human and I'm inside this corporate system, capitalism. And so all I can do is think like, well, if it's legal and if that is the way you make more money, that's the way you have to do it. Business is business, right? Well, I don't think so. I'll argue in that scenario, like it's their choice to do it. And certainly it's just up to you as a human whether you ethically, morally believe that's the case. But here's my issue. Let's not just look at profit. Let's not look at just the machinery of making money. Because that in itself can be a dead end, right? What are you making the money for? You tend to make money, to make more money, to make more money, to have power, to make more money, to make more money. At some point along these different aspects, there have to be offshoots, which were your primary goal, like to get freedom in your job, to get access to extra resources and things you could do to have a greater life, to provide more for your family, to build a legacy and things outside of it, to plan for your retirement. There have to be things that aren't just getting more money, right? That's a key thing a lot of people miss in esports. And by the way, some of them are win championships, because that might be part of your goal. That might be a little metric and marker along your purpose as a person, human being. But some of it also has to be because you care about this thing, because this is more important to you than money, because this thing right here, the money allows you the luxury of doing something that might lose you the money. So as a human being, which is what you are, a sovereign human being, not a fucking vector for profit, as I talked about in my companies video, that's all those companies are. Carlos is a human being, and he doesn't have a publicly traded company to my knowledge. So as a result, if I use my intuition, if I appreciate the special qualities that Perkz has as a human and as a player that don't show up on a balance sheet or in a box score, or at least they do, but they're not on his part of the box score. So unless you understand what I'm saying there, you'll just have to wait and see for future videos. That's why when the semi-finals came at Worlds, I said it in this way, and I just have a talent for saying things in a way that sounds provocative, but at the same time there's something to it. It's a bit mysterious. You've got to understand the way I think, and I don't always fully explain every detail of it. It goes like this. I picked G2 Esports to beat Damwon Gaming, even though I thought Damwon Gaming were better, and I actually thought Damwon Gaming would win. The reason why, essentially, is because there are all these intangibles and there are these elements that can happen, maybe in less actual scenarios, that when they will happen, G2 will win, even though it'll never show up on a scouting report. It'll never show up in terms of stylistic matchup. It'll never show up in terms of player versus player, as it wouldn't have in that series, and as it didn't, but it could have. So essentially, by the way, I'll give you the spoiler. That wasn't just because of Caps. That wasn't because Wunder's fucking sick top laner. That wasn't because Jankos is the best jungler maybe ever in League of Legends. It was essentially primarily because of Perkz. And that's when he wasn't even the best player, nor is he the person responsible for all the individual strengths of his teammates, without which this scenario wouldn't happen. But he was the key, he was the lever on which the world could be moved. Archimedes, shout out. So that's how special Perkz is. It's why I said in my video, the Carlos's Choice, I don't want to let Caps score, ever, but I'll never let Perkz score. So I would pick Perkz over Caps. I'm going from the human element, not the business side there. So I'm going to trust, if I keep Perkz, that we can still get a very good AD carry. I even think, by the way, AD carry on mid is the best. It's easier to replace an AD carry with a very good AD carry than it is to replace a mid laner with a godlike mid laner. Like, I know you might say, well, in that case, why replace Caps? No, my point is, I think Perkz is not bad enough compared to Caps, that it's enough of a big deal. And I don't think Caps is going to a team where his is better than ours. And I can bring in Reckless or upset, whoever the fuck it is. So in that scenario, Perkz' captaincy and all those extra things, the shot calling, the drive to win, the clutch factor, they'll get us to the top no matter what, as long as I put credible, competitive, competent pieces around him. I think he's the better vector to win even. But I also say that after I've considered what I want to do anyway, which I would do anyway. I'm not Carlos, but if I was there. I think you can bring in Upset or Patrick or whoever, Reckless, and it's fine. You can lose Caps. Even though, yes, you might be the man who let Caps score. You might be the guy who traded Wayne Gretzky. You might be remembered that way forever. In this one scenario, I'm willing to do it because I think in some ways, Perkz is more special than Caps. And maybe it'll take you a couple of years to understand what I really mean by that. Because maybe to you, it's guaranteed Caps performs it is for the next few years. Nothing's guaranteed in this business, and I've seen a lot more special, truly special things from Perkz than I have from Caps. And I'm not just talking about in the server there. I'm not talking about mechanical skill. So even if Caps goes to Fnatic, let's say, I mean, that wasn't going to happen, but let's say that does happen. Everyone's going to go, well, then the power dynamic goes over to Fnatic, because, you know, in Season 8, like, Caps was better than Perkz, and Fnatic was better than G2, therefore, like, now they've just given the whole franchise. No, because the Season 8 matchup is so different to the Season 11 matchup as to be ridiculous to reduce it to a single-factor analysis like that, of this team beat the other team, because they're not even the same teams. Like, they would still, in Fnatic, if you look at their current problems, massively lack a true captain. Caps can be a leader in the server in terms of how he plays, but not an emotional captain. They would still have communication issues, and they would still, we're assuming Reckless stays, have disputes between players in terms of mentality or how they see the game. The obvious one I would speculate is self-made versus Reckless. Use your head. So the emotional side says to me, well, Perkz could have left many times before for more money. He didn't. He's helped not just to win. It's not like we won once. He's helped to build the most epic dynasty the West has ever seen. He brought Caps and others to our team. Without him, we don't get those players. We wouldn't be in this position we're in to now make a choice to let Perkz go. So it's more than just his individual level play, which, by the way, is still extremely good and could probably still be the best EU mid lane. Its potential is right there still. And I'm not talking bullshit potential like I talk about with rookies. You've seen enough of it to know it can be done. So in my opinion, if I'm the one in that situation, he should have been allowed to write his own ticket, end on his own terms, and it's his team. But this is where it also depends on the player, I will say. I wouldn't just do that for every player. And where I say that is this. Just as owners and people who are the GMs, they will also, at times when it benefits them, use the loyalty card and the emotional side and the friendship angle. And at other times, they'll be cynical and they'll be businessmen and they'll let the numbers decide it, just as they can flip between depending on which benefits them. Let's not ignore that players can as well. Players can abuse loyalty and other aspects and claim that that's what they're trying to flex into. So I would just say this. I think Perkz was someone who did transcend that, though. I think he meant it that he wanted to stay in G2, that it was his team, that he wanted to play mid for them, and that he actually thought maybe it should be the case. So, not what Carlos should have done, but if I am Carlos, I would actually have honoured that of Perkz. And by the way, as you might see from my tweet, I think Carlos is one of the most legit people ever to work on the business side of esports. So, this is no knock against him. We just went a different path on this. And I will say this, there are more considerations that I can't get into. I don't even entirely know, I only know the hints of them, that actually do change this, but I feel like years down the line, that's up to Carlos, that's up to anyone else who wants to talk about that, who even wants to broach that. If they don't want to, I will respect that. So this is a point I want to get into. It's not as simple as the business or the emotion. It was both blended into one, and with a lot of considerations, some of which we can only speculate at. So this is where I have some insight you can't have, including some of the people involved in this deal, some of the players, just because of who you are and who I am and the different perspectives, that the points that we're at, and as a result, who we can communicate with and how. Because here's the thing. I'm going to now speculate, and if you can't read between the lines, fuck you. Who's to say Carlos did act off business alone, and this was about money and about making sure to fuck Fnatic? How do you know what his one-on-one relationships are with each player in G2 and how he determines what he wants to do with the team? What did he say to Caps to get him to join G2 in the first place? Because remember, technically it couldn't have been Perkz who said to him, because he only had a few hours, therefore that'd be poaching, right? So how did he get Caps to join G2? I'm sure he played a role in it. What did he say to him? You don't know. Do I know? I'm not saying this video, so apparently I don't know. How did he manage that whole role swap scenario without one of them leaving? How did he manage to make it seem make sense and everyone wanted it, but at the same time, it's like I used to say about shot calling. When these idiot other analysts would go, there's no such thing as a shot caller. You all have to say stuff. It's like, I made this point, right? Let's say I say to you, oh, what are we doing for dinner? And then you say, well, we could go to Wendy's. If I then say no, you might think you made the decision because you said, well, we could go to Wendy's, we could stay here. No, I made the decision. I was the one who activated the shot caller is the one who activates it. He's the trigger point. So in this scenario, even if it was actually Caps who was like, you know what, I wouldn't mind fucking around with AD carry. Well, if Perkz goes, well, I'm staying AD carry, then deal probably isn't happening, right? Or Carlos has to come in and deal with it. Now, if Perkz is the one who says, I want to play mid lane this split, I played fucking AD carry for a whole year, I want my spot back. Then maybe Caps goes, yeah, I'd be fine playing AD carry. Now, in that case, the deal doesn't happen if Perkz doesn't say it, but actually the one who makes the decision, if it's up to that, is Caps, because that means it doesn't have to be Carlos who says, well, now you both want to play mid lane if you said mid lane, which might have been what happened this off-season, right? So that's my point. There are extra ways laterally to think about this. How did Carlos, before he had the big box, manage to keep some of these players from going? Obviously, his Venomythy did go, right? How did he keep the others from going for the big money offers? I'll just say this. Based on what I know, this was not only or primarily about money in terms of the decision of who to pick between Caps and Perkz. After that, of course, money played an enormous role and it took its rightful place within the equation, secondary to other components. So now let's talk about the concept of agency. There is a reason why when your contract runs out, you are called a free agent. You no longer at that point in time, by the way, have a team. And all of the agency as to how to act is in your hands. You are free to do as you please in terms of if anyone gives you an offer, you can accept that offer within the boundaries of the rules of the transfer market and all the LCS stuff. Perkz was not a free agent. He was signed for 2021 by G2 Esports. He signed that deal this year. Remember, the entire team did. I even told them privately and publicly and told Zeyzal on that Crackdown episode, this is a mistake. It's not the way to do it. If you want all the power to be in your hands, don't do it this way. But they all had their own ideas. Maybe they didn't understand the principles I was talking about. Now, if he had been a free agent and his contract had run out and it was him choosing what to do, now Perkz can go anywhere he chooses. By the way, with no transfer fee. That makes him even more eligible as a signing. Because that means, let's use a number you've heard thrown out. Let's say the deal's 11 million, and let's say the signing fee is, let's say the transfer fee was 5 or 6 million, right? In that scenario, the same team, Cloud9, might want Perkz, and he can say to them, if I'd have been under contract with G2, you probably have to pay 11 million for this deal. But you know what? I'm going to say, I'm not greedy. I'll just take an extra 2 million for myself as a signing bonus for joining you. You paid 9 million for a deal. But you know what? Instead of G2 getting 5 or 6 million, I get 2 million and the deal. That's the ultimate power of being a free agent. But Perkz didn't think of this, and he didn't understand the way it worked that way. Or he thought this was all going to work on the emotional aspect, which as far as I know, was never promised to him. If he thinks otherwise, that's up to him to say. But I think this is one of the clever things that businessmen do in esports, where they simultaneously, some of them, they do have like Jack, Carlos, these guys aren't just total cynic businessmen. Like, they also do have a personal aspect. So sometimes they do mean that, or they give you an impression of that. And by the way, as I said, players themselves love to do it. One minute they love you, happy families think. Next thing you know, well, I'm leaving because actually I got this deal and I've always wanted to play with this guy. What the fuck? I thought we were building something. I know, but it's just a lot of time in my career. And besides, you know, you guys would be great. Everyone's doing this in esports. People like me, who just wear their principles on their sleeve and just tell you what I'm going to do, we're fucking aliens. And a lot of people would say, maybe I don't even have tact as a result of that. It's not even, like Machiavelli or Sun Tzu would tell me that's not a smart way to behave. But I'm trying to do something fucking different. Again, I'm doing things that are about not just business and being the smartest. It's about what I want to do, what I think gives my life and my career meaning, and the message I want to send to people, how I want to potentially influence the world. So instead, G2 got a lot of that money because they have his contract. That's entirely fair. That's entirely what we've got set up. It's the whole point of how the game is being played. Just maybe Perkz and some of the players don't yet fully understand the way the game is played. They think, well, because I'm the best player and you've signed me again, like, I have a lot of the power, don't I? No, you just gave that power away. This is why we did an episode of the Crackdown with Zeyzal where this news was announced. And so I was telling Zeyzal on it because I was trying to give him the example, because obviously he was sold to EG when he was like, what the fuck? I'm in top 4 at Worlds with you, Cloud9. Like, in that scenario, one of the things you sold them when you signed with them again was your right in the off-season to choose where you went. You sold them that choice. Now, you thought you were getting something in return, but what you sold them was incredibly valuable. That's why they wanted to sign you before the season was over. They can then send you anywhere they like. They could send you to the shittest team in fucking Timbuktu if they want, for no money whatsoever. That's up to them. They had that choice, as long as that team can pay whatever they ask for. So if you don't want them to do that, don't sign. Wait. It's called betting on yourself. I've done it a million times myself. I structure every deal so I can quit it in 30 days, so I can leave, so that afterwards I can choose if I resign. I bet on myself because I know what I'm capable of, and I'm going to level my thinking on the game up, so I'm always going to be in the best position, in my opinion, instead of taking these deals. This is where Pederson done fucked up. If he hadn't signed that huge long contract, then TSM would have to level their business shit up. They'd have had to get him better players. He could have made crazy demands that he maybe just said, and they gave lip service to. Yeah, we'll get you the jungler and that player. Like, instead, he fucked up. And so that's how he ended up in this situation. So at the end, you can't go, well, I'm so sorry for Perkz and so terrible the way they treated him. He kept opting into it, guys. You know that comment? Opt in. It's not that, like, they had him and he was like, oh, can I please leave? It's like, no, every time he signed on the dotted line, he opted into whatever the fuck they were going to do. Now, he didn't know what it was. That's part of what he was opting into. He was opening the Reggie mystery box. And what's that? Oh, desperation and failure at Worlds every single time. Yeah, that's what you signed up for, my boy. No one else is telling you that, because no one else understands this fucking industry, apparently. They're all just clowns talking because, oh, but I understand the way drafting in League of Legends works. So here's what I actually should have done in that deal. Why don't you learn the equivalent of drafting in business, or how it actually works, or human dynamics? There's a lot more to this game. That's why I'm cooking and you're fucking sitting watching, hoping I toss you a hot dog and a ham in a fucking whatever the fuck, a bun. There you go. Speaking of spacket buns, whatever. Right, so on that episode, I made that point. Now, I get why the player thinks it's good, because he goes, well, I'll be in the same lineup. Definitely not guaranteed. Is G2 with the same lineup? They all signed. That's what they all thought. Yeah, you don't know what you're doing. Oh, get security. To some degree, like, you're guaranteed to be signed, but you also haven't tested free agencies. You don't know what your market value was elsewhere. Now, there's certain players where it'll benefit them. Like, I'll give you an example. I think let's imagine this world. If Selfmade's contract had ended in this off-season, and Jankos' contract had ended, it probably actually benefits Jankos that his contract didn't end, because now GT is just going to keep him anyway, because someone would have to buy him. And in that scenario, they can't just say, well, now, listen, Jankos, you're technically not in a team right now, so we're choosing between you and Selfmade, and maybe I want Selfmade instead. So instead, there are cases where it can help you if you're perceived to be lesser value. But I would say in a lot of scenarios, especially if you're in peak form, at the top of your career, I'll make a separate video on this so people can link it to pros. It's nearly always going to benefit you to go for the free agency, test it, and know what you're doing. Again, depends who you are and where you are in your career. It's a nuanced topic. But it goes the other way around as well. The player who goes to free agency, just look at Reckless. I'll be doing videos on that boy soon, don't you worry. The passenger, as I'm calling him. They will potentially not honour your commitment to them as an org, your loyalty to them as an org. Both sides love to play the loyalty/human/emotional card whenever they're losing or in a weak position. So an org that is loyal, they might not get reciprocity from the player because the player will go, just business, bro. They offered me more. How could I not leave? Money's everything in this fucking life, right? No, it's a bunch of fucking magic squares. Now, the magic works, so you can use it to buy stuff, but ultimately it has to be ideals above the money, guys. Otherwise, what's the fucking point? So I believe that Perkz did actually commit to being his side of the deal. He was going to reciprocate whatever you gave to him and did, in fact, in his career. So again, if it was me, I would honour that. Now, I'll even say this. Let's talk about this topic of letting him go to Fnatic. Notice the keyword is letting. It's not like Fnatic can sign him. Yeah, because you can remember, he's not a free agent. So it's entirely, Carlos is right. When he got Perkz to sign the dotted line, it was up to him if Perkz ever plays for Fnatic during the tenure of that contract. And so if Carlos doesn't want him to go to his rival org, who he has plenty of reasons in his whole career to dislike or want to beat, I actually totally understand that. I think that's entirely his right. It's something that's his prerogative. And it's not like he wouldn't let him go to an LEC team. He was willing to let him go to another team and maybe lose to him. He was willing to let him go to Vitality, Misfits, the other. Point is, not Fnatic. And that's, you don't have to ever know the reason for that. Carlos doesn't owe you anything. He doesn't have to tell you the reason why. He can even just claim it's business if he wants. But I totally get the reason why. And as someone who also has ideas and principles and people I'm going to beat long-term in esports, I also won't ever do business with them, even if it makes sense. Or even if the guy asks me to in that scenario. If I think that what I want to do is more important in that situation. So, stupid Fnatic fans ruined this topic on Reddit and made Carlos out to be a villain where he wasn't a villain. Just like when it's about LCS topics, like Jensen, like Cloud9, stupid TSM fans ruin Reddit because you all think they don't have a conspiracy there because you don't look at the second and third order effects of how the Reddit works. You think the odd thread being vaguely critical, by the way, that's nearly always the shit TSM and Fnatic fans themselves flaming their own team for not meeting their expectations and their naive delusions. You think that means that it's just a random bunch of people on Reddit upvoting and downvoting. Like, is it fuck? Think it through. So, moron fans also, this is where Fnatic fans don't even understand anything about the industry. They were trying to say, like, this is just like when Fnatic let Caps go to G2 graciously. It's like, they didn't know. Caps was a free agent. Fnatic wanted like a motherfucker to sign that guy. Hence why, the second he signed with G2, super quickly in the free agency, like the date was announced that you could talk to people. That's why they, along with others, go look this up, were trying to make poaching allegations regarding G2. Because their thing was like, what the fuck? We didn't even get days to talk to the guy. Suddenly he just signed already. This must be foul play. Well, who can know if it was? Prove it in court, motherfucker. Oh, you don't have the money for a lawyer. That's a shame, isn't it? Big Daddy Riot will have to come in and help you. Oh, they don't give a fuck. Yeah, they're not so good with their investigations when they don't want to find anything, are they? Personally, I said this one more time, shall I? I would have let him go because my logic would go, I emotionally owe you. I won't keep you for mid because I want Caps. Therefore, because I'm choosing Caps over you in that sense, I'm kind of also being a little bit selfish in that regard, only my opinion. And so, if you really want to go to Fnatic, I hate him, but if you want to go, because I'm choosing Caps, like if I wanted to keep you, fair play, but because I'm choosing Caps, I'll let you go, even though it might cost me. Because yeah, you know what? If you haven't figured it out now, you'll never figure it out. So if you know, you know. Because I'm willing to lose money and power and respect if what I want to happen can happen. That's called a price. Understand alchemy if you want to understand the way this realm works. Now, once he's not going to Fnatic, once that's off the table, which it always was in this case, The other options aren't as obvious as people make out. This is where that stupid thing of G2 skewing LEC and all the stupid casters being like, they're a fucking amazing region, this is where the best League of Legends is. No, this is where the best League of Legends is played by G2 Esports, that 5-man lineup. Shut the fuck up, learn about this game, and respect the history of this game. Don't decide you're going to make this about you and your call and make yourself the one who's the arbiter of all history. You can have input, you can have your take, but respect what you're doing. Learn the rules before you try and break them and you try and get out there freestyling. And again, you can't cook like this. So watch me work, figure out from my process what I'm doing. Maybe you can level your shit up, all right? Physician, heal thyself. So the other options aren't as obvious. It's not obvious that these other teams, even Fnatic, by the way, would have made you a champion, but especially not the other teams. Like, the funny thing is this. Because of knowing what the orgs are like, I actually think the Vitality angle was the best angle, maybe even compared to the Fnatic one. I think that one was an interesting one, because think about this. If you keep Kabashad, perennially underrated top laner, can do so much more than you've seen so far. If you get a good coach, and especially that bot lane, like that bot lane is a pretty legit starting point, who's looking like this year, they can be the equivalent to what Kaiser and Kazi were last year. That's what they can be for 2021. So listen, we still need a jungler, but you've got Perkz, my dude. You can get all sorts of talent at the jungle position. I think, though, let's be real, Cloud9's roster is certainly as competitive. Also, Cloud9's roster not only allows G2 to make more money, potentially, we're not sure on that one, but I can tell you from behind the scenes, one of the things Carlos did in this deal wasn't just get himself paid, he made sure Perkz got mega paid. That's his way to repay his emotional investment in Perkz. That was his way to reciprocate what Perkz had done for him, to make sure he bled every penny out of Cloud9 to Perkz and potentially to Perkz' family. If you don't know that Carlos is an honourable man because you see him out there and you're one of these morons in the modern day who the media convinces you, if you speak roughly and you disrespect people and you make jokes, then you're a bad human fundamentally, then you are lost forever and nothing I tell you will change your mind. Now, there was way more went to G2 and to Perkz than C9 wanted to pay. Just trust and believe on that one player. Now let's look at Perkz and Cloud9's side. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm still going. Just watch me. Watch me. Perkz, of course he wanted to stay because he wanted to be a mid laner again. It's actually something I respect. I can barely even articulate it. I respect it so much because I know that in theory it reduces his chance to win. Because here's the thing, Perkz, ironically, is a true samurai. He represents that spirit, that code that you will live your life by, even if it means you die. Because this guy was willing to compete with Caps and with anyone in the world. He wanted to try and win everything. So he sacrificed for one, in the end, 2 seasons, 3 splits really, right? To play with Caps as mid laner. So he did that to get back to winning again. But here's the thing. He didn't want to just spend his whole career like Reckless at times did, like, oh, well, carry me, and I'm sort of the best at my role, but you're the real best player in the best position, so you win. He didn't want to do that. He was killing himself, by the way, even at AD carry, to be the best at AD carry like he tried to at mid lane. That's one of the coolest things as well. And he was one of the better players at his role in Season 9. Now, after his tragic circumstances this summer, I understand why he couldn't be the best ADC. But even then, he didn't complain. He played himself back into form by the time Worlds came. It's just the meta and the way the game was played didn't make him as impactful as in Season 9. But you know what? He gets a point that so many superstars don't get because the media has tricked them with these bullshit movie narratives that a ring is a ring. And so as a result, he gets that his individual legacy isn't just about titles full stop. It's about what type of title and how did you win it. So he understands that some of the titles he won with Caps, MSI, some of the LEC splits, some of those were more about Caps than they were about him. And so when people compare him and Caps individually, hence why Caps, in some analysts' eyes, I don't hate it, it's a different perspective, has pulled ahead in the GOAT debate, even though he's the one who has all the titles, right? Think about this. There's a reason why Steph Curry and Dwayne Wade got more titles playing with Kevin Durant and LeBron James, but Kevin Durant and LeBron James will be ahead of them in the GOAT discussions. That's exactly the same principle. So when you win everything, but you aren't the reason, that will in the end affect your legacy. Now, it's still probably in most cases, because of movie narrative, it's going to be better than not winning championships. So it's a different scenario if you're in that position. Now, Perkz is a different kind of cat. He wants to be the greatest. And I don't mean as in he'll tell you that. It's not just idle talk or bravado. It's not some Gilius bullshit where you can say anything, but you don't even have to back it up. This guy, it is so sexy, his fucking mentality, because he wants to go head to head with Caps. He wants to try his luck against Caps and say, let the chips fall where they may. I think I can beat him. He's on some Vegeta shit. You understand that? I think it's actually, as a result, a shame he isn't in EU for my own selfish reasons. He's trying to be remembered as the greatest to ever play League of Legends. I didn't say greatest EU player. I didn't say greatest mid player. I said the greatest. I could count on one hand the people who actually were trying to do that and who actually were willing to go to the lengths and pay the price to try and do that, as he's going to do right now. Don't even think, by the way, that Caps has that mentality. Based on what I've heard, he doesn't. And as I said, few ever have or will. And even if they do, sometimes they don't have the skill set to do it. Spoiler, your boy Pederson didn't have that mentality. Or if he did, then it manifested in a really twisted and fucked up way that was never going to come close to making it happen. So the crazy thing about Perkz is, he doesn't just have it, he's capable of doing it. Yeah, you heard me. I already think he's the greatest, but I think he's even capable of superseding Caps in all those areas. I said capable. I didn't say he did or has done it. I won't speak much on his whole family situation. I think it's in bad taste generally, just as I didn't speak about Doublelift's family situation. All I basically did was salute him for competing and winning and say, wow, unthinkable. How did you do it? But I will say this. Just consider this as a useful thought exercise. It comes from the field of philosophy called Stoicism. It's by the Roman emperor, in theory, Marcus Aurelius. This is a thought exercise for you. Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly. You just think about that. Now, if he was going to go to an EU team, well, this is a prime example of why the move is such a blockbuster, right? Because he is the player who always was going to stay in Europe to win, to go further at Worlds. So what people don't know is this isn't about getting paid. This implies Perkz thinks something different now about LCS than basically he established the long-term trend for having in Europe. Like, I even think Expected, the main reason he stayed in Europe was also he wanted to be with his boys and have a chill atmosphere and he could kind of run the culture of the team. And it wasn't as serious. I think it wasn't just that, oh, NA sucks. Like, Perkz was the standard and the reason why people thought I can stay in Europe, I can still win Worlds potentially. I don't even think it applies for Caps, because when Caps got the Cloud9 offer at the end of Season 8, he was still super young in his career. That was his first breakout massive year. Like, at that point in his time, even going then, it's not as big a deal to go then. You haven't fully developed still. Hasn't done what he's done since. So the key thing for me is, there are some very good options, yes, in Europe, but far from ironclad championship teams, even if they're Fnatic. It's not as clear-cut as people who are little whiny LEC or Fnatic fans want to make out because they're little crybabies trying to flip the monopoly board and go, we should change the rules, this is unfair. When Fnatic used to get every fucking talented player back in the day. So Cloud9, let's be real, has a great lineup. I didn't say, like, historically, just a great lineup to start out with. Now, it's not as good as G2's, but it's one of the closest you can get. I think you look at the best pieces. You got Sven. Very good player, right? He's already worked with Perkz in the past. They've got a similar mind, though. They're simpatico. They get along very well. They like each other. Blabber is obviously one of the players in the West with the most potential over the last few years, but he's very rough around the edges still. He still needs to learn a lot. He's not there yet. He's not a Jankos yet in terms of what he can do mentally and how he can play from behind. So I think if he is ever going to be a truly, really good jungler in a global sense, a worldwide sense, then playing with Perkz is the way to go. And if it doesn't work with Perkz, you just replace him. You just get someone who can do it. Then let's look at Vulcan. I think he could learn so much about how the map is played from playing with not just Sven, but now with Perkz as well. These supportive elements, even though Blabber's not been that supportive traditionally, they can enhance their game massively just by playing with Perkz and listening to this man. Fudge, listen, the jury's out on that one. Until I've seen more, like, I'm not really a fan of these direct upgrades if you're a team that thinks you can win Worlds. Like, I get why C9 of all teams believes in it. They've pulled off some of the miracles. But even then, I prefer to go with the proven quality. So that's just me. I'll also say, I do appreciate on the business side, the rogue factor that you send a message to the players that do play in your academy, or in their case, National League team, that if you play and you do well, you might get promoted to the main team. That's a great reason to join their team, right? Instead, if you join TSM Academy, you never fucking know if you're going to get any. I mean, Trick just got pulled in the fucking middle of the playoffs. So I also think, yes, it's harder to do well at Worlds, but it's far from impossible. Just look at some of the past successes and key kind of flashpoint moments for NA in the past. So Cloud9, when they made semis of Worlds in Season 8, yeah, you know what? They had Jensen. He ate Perkz, mate. He doesn't have the same intangibles Perkz does. He's just a fantastic mid laner. Team Liquid had Core-JJ. Core-JJ does have some of the intangibles Perkz do. Sadly, he isn't as fluent at English. But he can't be as impactful individually because of his position. He plays support, not mid lane. So as a result, he can't just say, get on my back, I'm going to hard carry Game 5 of a series like Perkz did against RNG at Season 8 Worlds. Same tournament. Rather than try to beat Caps and be a better Caps, Perkz is trying to do it a different way. He's also trying to do that, but he's trying to have this career story that's unbeatable. It's why, like, the absolute best duelers in Quake or Unreal or Painkiller, they have amazing legacies of their own, but nobody's legacy is like Fatality's. Because Fatality did it from game to game to game, swapping against different competition, different years, coming in late. The way he did it, he not only got the championships, he did it in such a wide and insane way. It's like, my God, how did you do this? You are the greatest. This is unbelievable. So think about what Perkz is trying to do. I'm a champion EU dominant mid laner. I'm a guy who goes to semis at Worlds with a whack bot lane. I did it as AD Carrion was a champion, was going against the best teams in the world and pulling out fucking Yasuo against SK Telecom in key games. Now I'm going to take NA to the finals of Worlds. I'm going to win championships in NA and establish a new dynasty so TSM and Team Liquid are forgotten before me. I'm going to beat EU when I go to the international competitions. They're going to remember me above everything and everyone else. That's what he's going for. He's already the most legendary EU player ever in League of Legends, and he is going for all the fucking marbles. How can you not respect that? This is the reason why, in my opinion, Rookie, the LPL champion and world champion, is actually underrated. He should get extra credit for going to China, playing with Chinese players, playing with a Korean who doesn't even understand Chinese, and then winning worlds in a field where you have entirely 5-man Korean teams, including the likes of Faker, where they're all from Korea, coached by Korean coaches, with pieces moulded around them from day one, playing on Korean soil. That's fucking godlike. This guy's right there near Faker, not accomplishments-wise, but in terms of what an individual player can do. So, you know what? Just like Perkz told you, watch him. Now let's look at Jack and Cloud9. Now, they had these chances before, but one thing I appreciate about Cloud9 is this. We're not talking about Jensen for a second, by the way. That wasn't that kind of money, and that was a gamble in a different way, and that was a reboot. They had Caps in Season 9 where they were trying to go for him. But you know what? Jack isn't the guy who's just going to spend every season no matter what, like Team Liquid. Like, that's a way to always have talent, but it's not a way to necessarily guarantee you make the championship, right? Nor is he going to save every season like TSM and be super cynical, despite constantly playing the emotional and the fucking personality card and the human element just to save money like a cynical bastard. Jack even said in my interview with him that he'd been saving up his pennies, and by the way, it was implied his credibility with his investors, to make a monster move that was a slam dunk, whether it made business sense or not. And this was his chance. He came in the off-season with 3 options. He had the guy he currently has, Niski, who is a cool guy, who is a good teammate. But you've seen his team is ceiling. You're not here just to make people happy as cool guys and have just a fun family environment. You're not going to win Worlds with Niski. So that one's out. Then you get Parlofox. Now, I don't know him myself, but I've heard a lot of good things behind the scenes. Maybe, top scenario, he could one day be a Perkz or a Caps. But he isn't now. He probably won't be in year 1. You have to gamble that he gets it in year 1, 2, 3. Otherwise, someone else gets to benefit from him, like happened to a lot of Team Liquids, like rookie guys that came up, and even some of C9s. And quite frankly, you're still not winning Worlds if you have Parlofox there. You have to hope it all comes together in a way that with Perkz you don't. So Perkz is the best in the server option. The issue is the money. Now, I'll be real. Pure business metrics only, it ain't worth it. In terms of the notion, you're never going to make profit off that deal. It's massively overflated in terms of the buyout, in terms of the salary, in terms of everything. But just as there are better reasons to keep Perkz compared to just the player Caps for Carlos, there are better reasons than he's just too expensive, the deal doesn't make sense business-wise, to sign Perkz if you're Jack and Cloud9. So let's start with results, right? You can buy results. Team Liquid's done it. Anything becomes possible when you have Perkz on your team. You could be the best Western team. You could win Worlds. You could win MSI. These were unthinkable things before. You could dominate NA. Cloud9 hasn't been doing that. They've been very good, but where the championships, right? You could change the perception of the whole region. Then you kick in those intangibles, right? He's clutch. Now imagine I've got Vulcan and Blabber and Fudge. They've never been and fucking like remember, Blabber wasn't playing when they made semi-finals of Worlds. He'd already been taken out. Like, those players haven't done anything great internationally. But imagine they're in a game 5 of a quarter-final at Worlds in Season 11, and they look down the line, and who do they see? They don't see Niski. They don't see Sven used to be good a few years ago. They see Perkz. Wait a minute, you mean that's the guy who has the 22-4 record in Game 4s? Like, that's the guy who's won the Game 5, who picked the Yasuo against SKT. That's the guy who hard-carried against Arnjet. Mate, if I see that guy, that's like looking down and seeing Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant. That's like looking down and seeing fucking Joe Montana, Tom Brady. Even if I didn't think I was going to win, I know he can. I know he thinks he's going to win. That is worth millions of dollars. That is a culture changer. That is a fucking game changer. Faker had it too. In my opinion, that's why I think a lot of his teammates were overrated. I think you put in even someone as skilled as Faker without those intangibles, you lose a lot of those games. I think the Rocks Tigers showed it. Not that they had as much skill in the mid lane, but you get the premise. Like, Smeb was a top laner at times as good as Faker was a mid laner, but did he have those intangibles? No. Then you have to add in, because of the poaching allegations and all the, I call them the cocktails by the pool, Perkz also can attract other talent. He can bring you value where he costs millions and millions, but he could get you another guy, maybe even a discount compared to the biggest offer, to come join your team. You can now make back those millions. There's implied value business-wise there that you can even factor back in. And he's a captain. Because he's a captain, he could improve your jungle, your support, how you practice, keep people... He can do half of a coach's fucking job. And, but, oh, what's that? As a coach, he's only managed to bring in also Mithy, Sven's old mate, a guy who taught him how to play League of Legends, as an assistant coach, a way better role for him, by the way, than head coach. This is already... Jack's laughing himself to sleep. He feels like Pat Riley after fucking 2010, where it's like everyone else was trying to get one of LeBron or fucking Dwayne Wade or Chris Bosh. And he was like... I've got all 3. I'm the god. Like, that's what Jack's on right now. He's fucking laughing in TSM's face. He's looking at Team Liquid going, spend all the money, mate. You might have a better looking lineup now, but I got Perkz. You haven't got Perkz. Where's your Perkz? Exactly. Your Perkz plays support. That's a shame. Seinfeld. Now, here's one reason that no one seems to really have understood. I've said it on talk shows, but think about this. Because this, to me, is the ultimate factor why I would have done the deal and why I actually believe Jack did the deal. He kind of said it in his interview with me. It's what if. It's one day down the line, thinking back, I had the chance to do it. What if I'd done it? What if he'd said yes when I made my best offer to him? That could haunt you. All the other factors eventually fade. One day, the money might not even be that big a deal. Maybe people are getting signed for 20 million in 10 years. Maybe a few years down the line, you've seen him go and win Worlds in a different team. Maybe you didn't get him and then you didn't get the players you would have gotten if you'd gotten him. And the players you have didn't quite work out as well as you wanted, but they worked out decently. All of those other factors can fade. It's why I always tell people, don't live your whole life for money. Get the money sorted, be smart with it, but use it for freedom. Not the other way around. Don't sell your freedom for the money. The reason you do it that way is because one day the money's spent. One day the toys are gone. One day all that remains is you, your family, and what you did. And that's all you've got to hold on to. And all you've got to look back on. All you've got to be proud of. Not how much money you made. So this is the one factor that doesn't fade. That doesn't get worse. Because for romantics like me, you have to do that move. Because that is the ultimate imperative. It's the reason why I've often pointed out that when they asked me to coach Fnatic, there was only one factor could actually have made me do it. Because everything else said, I don't. In my gut, it tells me it's not the right move. And there's one factor alone. It's the only time I've ever actually considered coaching. And it's if I could have coached Soaz. And that's because, think about this. I didn't say if I could have coached Forgiven, I would have. If I could have coached Froggen. Players I think individually are better, or players I was a massive fan of. Because I don't know that they'd have the mentality that I wanted. But I knew even back then that Soaz had an amazing mentality as a teammate and an individual competitor. And I didn't see him be properly unlocked in that way. And I thought if I ever got a chance to actually work with this guy at that time, I would have done it. That actually could have tipped me over, and I would have at least given it a year just to try and help this guy unlock what he was capable of. Because at the time, he was one of the most underrated players ever. I know because he won the championship more than Carthage number one. Right? They didn't even get the reason why. They still thought Reckless was the better player on his fucking team. They just didn't get it. So I think the coolest thing about this deal is, I think ultimately, now that it's all settled, there are no real regrets for anyone in this deal. Carlos got what he wanted. He still has caps. Perkz didn't go to Fnatic. He got millions of dollars. There's no direct competition. And all of that was his right as a contract holder, but he still did his best for Perkz outside of sending him to Fnatic. Perkz, he got most of what he wanted. He's going to be a mid laner. He's on a big team. He's got massive support, lots of money. He's got the chance to do something very unique. He didn't go to Fnatic, but he already sold that right. So that was never his choice to make. Cloud9 got what they wanted. They got a superstar player, a guy who's a game and a culture changer. Throw a wrench into the fucking machinery of the Matrix. Change the whole concept of League of Legends regions. Redefine their legacy as an organisation. Oh, you thought they just did budget deals and brought in the rookies, did they? Never wonder what if. So think on how you live your life and how you make your decisions. This video was kindly supported by Pronogo, Mohammed, Alabdul, Razzaq, Dean Tanglis, James Pederson, VatriSam, ErikHillestad, Andreas Kroknes, Hades, Zoomba Gaming, JDubs, Tobias Bernasconi, and Alexander Rao. Special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for one of my upcoming episodes? Maybe you want to ask more of those questions in that video AMA I do each month. Do you want teasers? Find out who the next guests are for my shows. Well, maybe you even want to take part in one of those crazy donated discussions where we go all over the place. If any of these perks appeal to you, or you want to support the channel, put your money where your mouth is and join the Illuminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.